visitors in the room, thank you, welcome. Appreciate having you here. Our 6:30 meeting, 6:30 to 7 o'clock is what we call Committee of the Whole. If I could turn on the speaker. At 6:30 to 7 is Committee of the Whole. We don't take any action or voting then, but we have some procedural, some staff reports to get through for our 7 o'clock meeting, and if we get through in time and you want to do public comment then, definitely open to it. If not, we'll do it at 7 o'clock when we get up there, okay? Should be a pretty quick meeting tonight, just to give you, this won't be a 7:30, 8 o'clock meeting, I don't think, tonight. So, all right. So we'll call our 6:30 Committee of the Whole meeting to order and discussion on consent agenda items. Any questions on the expenditures before I move on from that? Going once, going twice, we're good. All right. So Travis, let's jump to you. If we've got a few items on here, and one of the things with Northridge, if I could kind of tee this up for Travis, when you think of Northridge Drive, that was first started to be developed 1994 roughly, and from roughly the Walker entrance to Northridge going west, there's been 5 different phases of this development over time. So you have some different speeds in there that's going to be addressed tonight, but then there's also the final connection that we did the ribbon cutting for last week to have the continuity, and I'll let you do that. But I think it's important to understand there's been different times in the city's history over the last 24, 25 years that decisions have been made on the stretch of road, and part of what Travis being here tonight is to get the continuity established with this now that we've made that final connection and make sure that things are consistent in there. So that being said, hopefully I did a little bit of work there for you.
Yeah, that was a great intro. Thank you. So today's really just procedural. Like the mayor said, Northridge Drive has been built like puzzle pieces over the last 25 plus years. And the blue lines, I put together the map just to try to help explain what's going on. What we're before you today for is the blue section, the new section of Northridge. We call it internally here Northridge West. On the west side of the map is the city's project, and Northridge East Phase 1 is on the east side of the project. That was the Visser development that built that section of road. So we have 2 action items before you today with those road sections, specifically two different Act 51 resolutions. By passing these resolutions, the streets become public, they're accepted into the public system, and then we can start maintaining them, and they'll be open to the public at the resolution. But the traffic control order was written, signed by the city engineer and the police chief, and that establishes regulatory signs, speed limits, truck route. And so now that we have continuity of Northridge Drive from Fruitridge Avenue in the west to Walker Avenue in the east, and then even continuing further out to Bristol, we're looking at a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit along the entire stretch. So 35 is established east of Walker. This will set 35 for the section between Fruitridge and Walker.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
So we're not required to do a traffic study or anything to set the speed limit because of the existing speed limits on the rest of the road?
Yeah, so I'm limited in what I can put on the traffic control order, but our supporting files have more information. So when so like we said, this project's been built in 5 phases over the years. We actually we were able to track down 4 of the 5 design speed studies. You can see the curves in the road and such. 4 of the 5 design speeds were all 35 miles an hour. So we decided for continuity's sake, that's also the speed limit east of Walker. So it makes sense to make the entire section 35 miles an hour. The only one we couldn't track it down on was that little piece right off of Fruitridge. And if I had to guess, it's probably pretty darn close to 35 miles an hour too, because it's not very long before you hit the curve that we put in there. So, so yes. So we actually do have the design speeds that the engineers that design the roads came up with, and that is our engineering study to support the speed limit.
Perfect. That's just what I wanted to, I guess, check on, because I know how the setting speed limit stuff can be.
Exactly, yeah.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments?
In that paperwork, okay,
Dan, you-
resolution for Northridge West.
Dan, would you tap your mic? Thanks. Awesome.
So on our paperwork, you got resolution for Northridge West and East, so I don't see a number on it, but we know.
Oh, for
what
the
it is.
speed? You when you said the numbers?
I'm talking about the resolution numbers.
The resolution numbers aren't on there because he puts it in a PDF packet, so it's all lumped together.
Oh, non-editable.
I'm sorry, I took that off the agenda.
Yep.
I took the 20-577, 20-578
Right.
off the agenda.
So they're on the agenda, but not on the packet that he
Okay.
submits.
But we got a picture here to show. Okay,
But the actual document will have it on, yep.
okay.
Good catch.
You can number them whatever you want to number them, I just need the two resolutions.
So with that in mind, so we're past Northridge West, Northridge East. Any questions on the traffic control order? Okay. Kenowa Avenue mileage correction.
Yeah, we got another slide here. This is a lot of paperwork for an extremely minor change. That's fine, you can just leave it up like that, Daryl, if you want to. Okay, yeah, so Kenowa Avenue, south of Richmond Street, so right on the western boundary of the city of Walker. So when the Cambridge Grove Phase 2 development went in, I guess that was last year, that probably got finalized, I believe. Prior to the development occurring, there was a 793-foot stretch of dirt road that was under the jurisdiction of the Ottawa County Road Commission. As part of the development agreement, we agreed to get that jurisdiction transferred to Walker because it was going to become a neighborhood street. Okay, so when we passed those resolutions for the jurisdictional transfer, I was under the belief that we were transferring the road right away and that it would not impact our Act 51 certified mileage that we get funded from the state. That was a wrong assumption. So they credited us the 793 feet of local roadway. Then a year later, the neighborhood's built, and we certified the entire 1,478 feet. So we effectively double counted the 793-foot section. So this is something that we found during our own internal audit of the paperwork. I was digging through it and just, I mean, it's 0.15 miles of local street. It's a few $100 a year in annual funding. But I contacted MDOT and I created a resolution. They said, you need to create a resolution to correct this. I did, sent it to them. They said, that's not wordy enough. We want you to add some more words in it. And that's why it references all the different past resolutions. So hopefully this slide explains what we're asking for today. We're asking for an Act 51 mileage correction resolution that is just going to decrease our local road mileage by 793 feet so that we're not double counting this section. So that's clear.
Because it's already been double
Because it's
counted.
already, yeah, it's included in the 1478. So.
Travis, you're a very good steward of the public trust.
I kind of, I didn't think it'd be this complicated, but once you kind of open up that box, you gotta see it out, so.
Finding 0.15 miles, right?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's nothing.
All right.
So just a housekeeping thing.
So, questions, comments on this? Any concerns? Pretty self-explanatory. I think, Travis, we're going to cut you loose then. We'll be good. We'll get these taken up at the 7 o'clock meeting. And actually, before Travis, no objections that we're going to see for the 7 o'clock vote? We're all good? Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, next, let's jump up is we have in our packet tonight an addendum for defined benefit plan adoption agreement, somewhat procedural. If I can call our HR director, Shannon, up to the podium to walk through this for our MERS paperwork cleanup.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't have much more to add than what the mayor just said. Oh, sorry, we're stuck here. Okay. There are 4 active plans in our defined benefit pension program. They are all closed. And MERS, which is Municipal Employee Retirement Systems, they're doing an overhaul of all of their agreements that they have. And so we just have to submit new ones with the same benefit outline. So there's no changes whatsoever to the plan, just paperwork, housekeeping paperwork for MERS.
That's why there's multiple sections and there's the different plans.
Yeah, 4
Yep.
different groups. Yep.
So questions, comments? Good. Any issues taking this up at 7 o'clock for approval then? Okay. We're
Okay.
good. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for
Yep.
staying.
It's good to see all of you.
Yeah. Let's go, Commissioner, we'll start with manager comments, and we'll get through this part of it. I'll start with Frank to the left and end with Daryl coming around, and then Daryl will give us an update, our plan for remote meetings for the future as we see the increase in the COVID cases and some of the impacts we're having, just what our plans are on a go forward. So that being said, Mr. Wash,
We
any?
do have hard copies of your new master plan. We're going to rely on the electronic copies that are out there, but if you need a hard copy for reference, I have probably 10 in my office, so feel free to stop in and take a peek at that. And because of the limited number, I don't want to just shotgun them out to everybody. But we will keep the 1959 through the 2020 master plans all in the clerk's office, so I'm going to work with Sarah on how to put that in a safe and secure place because of the stack of documents, and then get a reference number on it so people in the future be able to find those. Because it's almost by luck that we found all the way back to the 59 plans. It's enough.
Yeah, that's impressive, because that's going back to the township days.
Those Walker Township.
Okay, good, thank you. Commissioner Kent?
Well, I guess might as well do this now as later, but 2 weeks ago, I got surprised with a lot of kind words and people and
Was it a good
everything.
surprise or a bad surprise
Oh, it
for
was
the
good.
group?
It was good,
Right.
but just thank you, and you know, you come into this job, the city, when I come in, it was spending money, and things are a lot different now, and it's, the public's money's being spent quite differently. We're trying to be frugal and do things, pay as we go and everything, and it's a good thing to see, but, you know, every commissioner comes in with ideas and things they'd like to see. Maybe we should change this or that or whatever, but, you know, it takes 4 votes. And when it comes to team, there's no I in it, so, but I just really think that it's been great, learned a lot, and like I said, worked with a lot of good people and learned a lot of things, so I enjoyed it, thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you. Commissioner Shane?
Dan, I just want to say I'm really going to miss you, and I've really enjoyed sitting next to you. I hope you don't mind every once in a while when I kick you, because you carry on a little bit. But other than that, I've learned so much from you, and I'm really going to miss our chats and our sidebars. So best of luck to you. And again, if you still want to continue to look over the expenditures, please send me a note, and I'll make sure I ask any questions that I might not fine-tune like you do. So I appreciate your years of service, and on behalf of myself and my husband, who used to sit in this chair, job well done.
Thank you.
Job well done. Compliments to the clerk and the group of volunteers and election workers that she had. She did a great job, and very proud of my daughter, who happened to chair one of the precincts, first one in. So,
Love
good
it.
job.
Thank you.
Community engagement just finished up doing their scarecrow contest in downtown Walker, in Standale area of the Downtown Development Authority. It seemed like we had pretty good turnout with everyone in the community and trying to engage people, and I was not able to attend our last meeting, but looking forward to the next meeting where we're going to look at what we're doing for the winter time. So.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff going on down there, great ideas. Commissioner Groders?
I just wanted to share that I sit on the Area Agency on Aging Advisory Committee, and I learned at our meeting last week, when we were shut down for COVID, restaurants obviously weren't, using the food that was being produced by the farmers. Anyways, there's a program called Farmers to Families to get rid of the excess, extra produce that they had, and 16,000 boxes of produce were distributed over 2 different sessions to seniors through Meals on Wheels. So I thought that was really impressive, kind of win-win for everybody. And I worked the day of the election. I was very impressed. It went very, very well. I had a great chairperson, great group, great voters, great residents coming in, and everything went very smoothly. I was really, really, really impressed. I actually really had a great day. It was very enjoyable.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gilbert?
Not a lot for me. The big thing is that we, on the Rapid, have started our CEO search process. We've had a couple of committee meetings over the past week, and we're continuing to work through the process of beginning to narrow candidates. At this point, candidates are anonymous, and we are working towards narrowing the list so that we can have a public process and some candidates that will probably be named at that point. So again, we're beginning to set the schedule for who we're considering for interviews, and more on that soon. I'm sure you'll hear lots about it, not only from me, but from things like MLive and what have you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
I just want to say our election day did go wonderful. We had all of our precincts in by 9:30, and our absentee receiving board submitted results at 10:30, which is a normal election, so record breaker. For a big election like this one, talking to the election equipment company, we were top 2% in the state for returns, what time we were done. And thank you all for supporting me, and I will be here 4 more years. So I'm happy to share that.
Great, thank you. Daryl?
First off, I don't know if there's any questions on the last 2 resolutions on the agenda. If you want any clarification on those 2 items, the resolution 2580, or we could do those during the regular meetings.
Questions from the group? Okay.
The first one is regarding the public act 152 exemption we do every year, and then the second one is the debris, as reported to you a couple months ago, working with Wyoming and the other cities on the MIDC grant. So that's looking for approval of that when we get to the resolution so we can move forward. So thanks to Dan for all his work on that. It's worked out great, and Wyoming is taking the lead on that on our behalf. So thanks to Scott Smith and Drew over at City of Wyoming on that. So if there's no questions on that, the mayor mentioned possibility of going back to some virtual meetings. If you recall, the legislature a couple of weeks ago passed some legislation after the governor's orders were revised by the court system. So the legislature does allow us to have continue to allow us to have virtual meetings if we so decide. We don't have to do that up until the end of the year. We can meet virtually for any reason up until the end of the year. So it's really a commission decision if we want to. Any future meetings before now at the end of the year have a combination of meetings, meet in person, or want to meet virtually totally like we did at the beginning of the pandemic. So with the numbers increasing, those are some options that we have moving forward, but really a commission decision. So I'll look for your guidance on that as we move forward throughout the rest of the year. And then starting in January for next year, we still have the ability to move to meet remotely if we so choose, but there has to be one of 3 reasons why. One is military leave, a medical situation, or a state and local declared emergency. Now, Steve was telling me beforehand, I think we have 8 days left in lame duck this year, so that may be changing. Yeah, so there may be some changes to that to allow, I think there's a push to allow basically no reason virtual meetings next year like we can do now, so we can do those virtually. So more to come on that, but that'll be something we'll need to look at as of January. So I guess the bottom line is the end of this year, if you want to meet virtually, we can do a combination of those if the numbers continue to rise. And we don't know if and when things will be shutting down with the numbers going up. It may or may not happen. We have room enough with small crowds to meet in person as we have been doing. I'll look for your guidance on that if we want to do anything different.
I'll build off of that just from a virtual meeting perspective. Daryl and I were talking earlier today about what does that process look like to make that decision, and it won't be a last minute thing. We'll do it obviously that week before because we have a timeline to follow, but I think reaching out to the group, but if you do have concerns about being too close, I mean, we're all masked up here right now, but if it's something where we feel that there's going to be a potential health impact and we need to be split apart, then we'll take that up in the upcoming meeting. So don't hesitate to let either or both of us know, but we'll make that decision collectively amongst all of us of what makes the most sense. So there's that. On the election, yes, congratulations to the clerk. Another successful election. Great day that day, and things went extremely well, and just came up, and it's kind of neat to see 8:20, 8:30 at night, we were done. Everything was at that point even the process of being uploaded or had been uploaded. So our precinct chairs did a pretty good job, including our youngest one. Amongst other things. So just that's neat to see, because I know that did not happen every place. So we definitely do well there. Congratulations to our commissioners, Commissioner Heisinger, for coming back. I had a discussion with Commissioner Glanville, congratulating her last week, and excited about having her in that official role as elected official, and we'll be all working together for the next few years. And then on the 23rd, obviously, Marv Rapp will be starting with us, not replacing Commissioner Kent, but just occupying that chair. So. And then I was remiss in the city newsletter today to congratulate our clerk as well for her successful outcome on the election as well. So that one is on me. On the November 23rd meeting, we'll have the swearing in at the 7 o'clock meeting. But one of the things, too, I believe on the 23rd, I see Officer tapping us in the back. Do you happen to have one of the body cams on by chance? You're not? Okay, so our department is switching over the next month or so to body cams on all of our officers. That is done. I feel like we're getting ahead of the curve here in doing this with the transparency that we want to have for our community. I also believe that it's a protection for our officers. I always say, as a football coach, film doesn't lie. It's on the video. It's going to show, the great things that we do. So I'm actually excited about that and that conversion. That is actually a part of the in-car cameras that we had to upgrade, that were ancient and I think really duct tape and baling wired up inside the vehicles, and quite often were broke sometimes more than they were in use. So as part of our agreement with Axon, which was a budgeted item this past year, the body cams actually were packaged in with the in-car cameras. So you'll see on the 23rd, I believe, the chief is planning on doing a presentation for us on those, and that transition will be with the officers. So I just wanted to give you a heads up at this point on that. So that being said, we're at 6:52, so we have a few minutes. Do we have from our residents in the audience, we can do it officially now or do it officially at the 7 o'clock. It's your desire for public comment. If you feel, we can keep going at 7 o'clock. If some of you want to go now, we can make sure it's entered into the record, or we can just wait till 7 o'clock. It's your preference. So chair's discretion, we're happy to open it up for the interest of time here for public comment if it would help. So I can imagine, might have heard a rumbling of my Lincoln Longs, Sunset Hills. All right. If you would mind, for the red light is on there, and feel free, you're far enough away from the distancing, you're welcome to drop the mask if you're comfortable.
The red light was on, so.
Yep. Perfect. And if you just share your name and address for us and for your public comments.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So, Mayor, Commission members, thank you very much for having us here this evening. I'm here with my wife, Sarah, and my neighbor, Michael. My name is Jared Van Dopp. I live at 881 Maple Row. So I am on Maple Row south of Leonard, just on the north side of the golf course. So I'm sure most of you are aware there was a virtual meeting last Thursday, I believe, with the developer that they kind of went over some of the plans that had their kind of initial draft of the plan. what the layout was, what basically what their initial proposal. And I completely understand this is an initial draft, by no means a finished product. So I know most of the neighborhood, I'm sure you've probably heard a lot of grumblings that were going on during that virtual call-in meeting. Most of the neighbors in my neighborhood on the north side of the golf course that I've spoken with would very much prefer for that to remain a golf course. I know progress is hard to stop, and there may or may not be a buyer willing to purchase that property and continue to operate that as a golf course. I think that would be the preferred outcome, moving forward into the future. If that's not an option and there is no buyer available and the current owners continue to look to sell that property off for development, I think there's a lot of different routes and options that we can look at regarding how a development would go into that area. I would expect that as time goes on, we're probably going to see more and more people at these type of meetings. I didn't realize until about 4 o'clock this afternoon that there was a council meeting, so we thought, well, we better go and start voicing our opinions. But I think there's a lot of different things that a lot of us are concerned about. Anybody, I'm sure my wife and Michael can come up and chime in if there's things I miss. But just a few of our concerns right off the bat that I'm sure you've probably heard before. I'll reiterate them here, though. First of all, our primary concern, because like I said, we live right on Maple Row, and we absolutely do not want Maple Row becoming a through street from Leonard to Lake Michigan Drive. Our neighborhood right now is very quiet because it's, you have to enter and exit the neighborhood from Leonard. There's no through traffic anywhere. Anybody driving around in the neighborhood either lives in the neighborhood or is visiting somebody in the neighborhood. If that becomes a through street to Lake Michigan Drive, I could easily expect traffic to quadruple up and down the street that I live on, which is obviously not preferred. Also very concerned about more apartments going in. I was actually pleasantly surprised during the virtual meeting last week at what they proposed for apartments. I mean, I got to say, as far as apartments go, those were pretty nice looking. But my concern is, frankly, between Wilson and Collindale on Lake Michigan Drive, we already have, I did a rough count about, I think back in the spring, already between like 2,000 to 3,000 apartments in that short stretch of Lake Michigan Drive. I see absolutely no need where we should be bringing more apartments into the area. Maybe there's a discussion for making those condos, but I want to see people in there living in any proposed development that does go in that have a vested interest in keeping that nice. And I think there's pretty good evidence to support, people who rent don't have that financial or fiduciary interest to maintaining and upkeeping the property. Now, the developers that they said, they stated they plan on, operating that apartment complex for the foreseeable future. And of course, they can swear up and down that they're going to do everything to keep it nice. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I think there's a much better likelihood of having actual homeowners there to upkeep the area and keep it nice, vice apartments. So, I mean, those are a few of the concerns. Like I said, I'm sure as time goes on, more and more people are going to come up and speak their concerns. Those are kind of a couple of the big ones. There's lots of different ways we can mitigate to try to keep people happy if this development does go forward. But those are just a few of our primary concerns, so you at least start to understand our perspective as living in that neighborhood on the north side of the proposed development. So, does anybody have any questions before I go sit back down?
No.
Sarah? What's that? Yeah, yes, very good point. So we live at the farthest north point on Maple Row where there's sidewalks. So my property is on the west side of Maple Row, and the sidewalk ends at the north end of my property. So everything on Maple Row north of us up to Leonard, there's no sidewalks. So again, just another thing to be addressed if developments go in there is that increased traffic, we would need to do sidewalks as well too.
So, thank you, Mr. Van Doppen. What we'll do, if it pleases the commission, we'll we'll hit at 6:59, about to be 7 o'clock. We'll pause for the rest of the audience here, and we can have more dialogue. You've got the commission up here. We want to make sure voices are heard and dialogue that we're able to can take place. We'll get started the commission meeting. We'll get through our consent agenda and the approval items here. And then if you'll bear with us in the resolutions, we move pretty quick through these because we worked through it at 6:30. And let's have back up to the podium any questions from the commissioners and further comment. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
So
Thank
if you
very
hang with
much.
me for a second here, and we'll get started. And if it's all right with the group, 7 o'clock someplace, we'll call our 7 o'clock city commission meeting to order. I'd like to ask Commissioner Groders to please deliver the invocation and lead us in Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me for a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, we come together this evening experiencing so many conflicting emotions. There's still so much uncertainty in our nation and in our world. We thank you, God, for the gift of hope and optimism, especially for those suffering due to the pandemic. Please heal our land. Help us to strive for healing and unity in all that we do. Please give protection to our public safety staff and all who work to protect our freedom. Thank you for all who serve in these uncertain times. Guide our decisions this evening. Keep us all focused on our common goal of improving quality of life for our residents. And above all, please help us remain committed to serving with integrity. And we ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. I'd like to ask the audience to please join with us and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If I could please ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Kent,
Present.
Commissioner DeShane,
Present?
Commissioner Heisinger,
Present.
Commissioner Groders,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Present.
Thank you.
And if I could look for a motion to excuse Commissioner Glanville on her birthday today.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner DeShane.
I'll support.
Support Commissioner Groders. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Approval is excused. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the October 26, 2020 meeting. Are there any questions on this? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion.
Motion Commissioner Heisinger.
Support.
Support Gilbert. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The minutes are approved. Right now, we'll have public comment on agenda items. So this is what's on the agenda. So if there's anything on the agenda, otherwise we'll come back to the public comment in a minute. See none. On the consent agenda, we have 3 items. First is the expenditures in the amount of $1,858,193.33. The second is the defined benefit plan adoption agreement addendum with MERS that our HR director had covered with us in our 6:30 committee of the whole meeting. And the third is the traffic control order 265 to have the stop sign placed at South Industrial Drive at Northridge Drive and the speed limit signs to be placed at South Industrial Drive and Northridge Drive Northwest to be consistent throughout. Any questions on the consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval on those.
I'll make the motion to pay the bills.
Thank you, Commissioner Kent. Do you have support?
I'll support.
Support Commissioner Groders. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Consent agenda is passed. Next on the list is Resolution 20-577. This is Northridge West Roadway Acceptance. We're going to do these one at a time to be official. We covered this in our 6:30 committee of the whole meeting, so I'll ask if there's any other questions or discussion. If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner DeShane, do you have support?
Support.
Support from Commissioner Gilbert. Any other discussion on Resolution 20-577? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Resolution 20-577 is passed. Next on the list is Resolution 20-578, Northridge East Phase 1 Roadway Acceptance. We also covered this in our 6:30 committee of the whole meeting. I'll entertain a motion for approval on this.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Heisinger.
Support.
Support from Commissioner Groders. Any other discussion on Resolution 20-578? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution 20-578 is passed. Next on the list is the Resolution 20-579 for Kenowa Avenue mileage correction, as Travis covered in the 6:30 Committee of the Whole meeting. Are there any other questions on this? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Make the
I'll make-
motion.
I'll support.
Commissioner Gilbert, support from Commissioner DeShane. Any other discussion on Resolution 20-579? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution 20-579 is passed. Next on the list is Resolution 20-580. I have to cut back on the caffeine before the meetings. Resolution 20-580 on the Public Act 152 exemption that Daryl covered in our 6:30 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there any other discussion on this? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Make the motion.
I'll support.
Motion from Commissioner Gilbert, support from Commissioner Kent. Any other discussion on Resolution 20-580? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution 20-580 is passed. Next on the list is resolution, and thank goodness the last one, Resolution 20-581 for continuing the MIDC-related collaboration, as Daryl covered in the 6:30 Committee of the Whole meeting. I'll entertain a motion for approval on this.
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Motion.
support.
Commissioner Heisinger, support from DeShane. Any other discussion on Resolution 20-581? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution 20-581 is passed. Finally, we're back to other public comments. So I told you we'd breeze through it. All right, so you're welcome to come back up, Mr. Van Dopp, if you wanted to continue conversation. And one of the things that you were here for the 6:30 meeting, commissioners take their comments, and we really, unless we have a packed room, we like being able to have discussions and not have time constraints. So please, let's have some dialogue with it. And the concerns you had shared around the, the connection Maple Row is a through street, and then the more apartments versus condos, single-family homes, if you will, and then also the sidewalks, which I realize is traversing through that area quite frequently myself. That's somewhat problematic in that first half coming up there. So that's what we had so far. So if there's some other items you'd like to share, please have at it.
I think it's just a broader discussion that I think will be had with, more members of the community, both from my neighborhood on the north side of the current golf course, as well as the Lincoln Laws neighborhood. I'm sure, as these meetings continue, more people will come and voice their concerns. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion back and forth. Obviously, traffic is going to be a big issue. We already kind of discussed that. Apartments versus condos versus single-family homes only, the size of the lots, how all that's broken down. Whether the proposed development connects through or whether that's separated by green space. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can discuss. I was, talking with my neighbor Michael yesterday about potentially using, if the residential neighborhood does go in there, if it's kind of split in half with condos connecting to Lake Michigan Drive, the single-family homes connecting north, but having Custer as an additional connection to reduce traffic. So I think there's a lot of different options I think we should all be looking at and discussing, and I'm sure more people, like I said, will be bringing these points up as this goes on. I'm not sure, because I don't think we've even, it's still currently zoned as agricultural for the golf course, correct?
Correct. And I had
Is there any proposed schedule for rezoning that at this point?
No, there is not. So that part of that process, and I'd shared with Mr. Segelis this afternoon, and I think he shared that email on social media. So it was worded so that anybody reading it would understand what that process looks like.
Okay.
So right now, I believe we have received our preliminary area site plan from the developer. They have met with, so I explained that process is when a proposed development comes into the city, whether residential, commercial, or otherwise, they meet with city staff. Sometimes it's some rough drawings and sketches, and I think I think as the Blaines and Standale had opened up, I remember meeting, it was my first week as mayor, and meeting with the managers and staff here with the Blaines folks from Wisconsin who would come in. And a lot of this was conceptual at that point. They'd been looking at that land for over 5 years. That was a preliminary meeting, or a preliminary meeting to find out what they needed to do as far as our process went. So a lot of that's what's taken place so far. Been a little bit choppy, obviously, with some COVID implications, and then also the developer understanding how our city does things and what our processes are and what needs to be followed. So, the first step is that preliminary site plan has been brought into our staff. They are currently reviewing that. That may take, I would expect over the next few weeks that's being done. It might be shorter than that. But as that takes place, they give feedback to the developer then on the things that they're going to need to see before it goes to the Planning Commission. The developers, most of the time, do follow that guidance and direction. Have seen a time or two when developers don't follow that direction and bring those plans up. So the key is, and that's where I put in the email back to Frank, was I had said that the process is it goes to the Planning Commission for the development plans. And then we get into things, stormwater drainage and a lot of the things that the neighbors are talking about. The Planning Commission makes a decision at that point, and if it's zoned properly or for that development, which right now it's not, you are correct, then it can move forward. At this point, the extra step that would take place, that last step would be the city commission would need to approve the rezoning of that from agricultural probably to some type of a planned unit development, residential planned unit development at that point. So I think we're a bit a ways from that. But I think it's important that you have the time to speak with us. I had shared with Mr. Segelis both Commissioner Groders and Heisinga's contact as well, because that's a third ward project. We're all up, all listening and hearing from residents on it, and I think it's important that everybody knows they have a voice and we're listening. But there's multiple steps in the process. Right. And I think there was allusion to a couple of things, and maybe I can help with the neighbors, whether they're watching on video now or you're able to share with them out in the neighborhood. A couple of things. The meetings that have taken place with the city have been with staff as part of that normal process. There's no meetings with any of these elected officials up here that have met with the developer. Wouldn't know them if they walked past us on the street. So that's a critical a point there, because sometimes there's that, and I think I saw one of the comments out there, and maybe it started to build up a little bit of steam, but we've not met with, any of us met with the developer. So okay. We're away from even meeting with them in the process. The second thing is there was a little bit of a drive from one person, I think other people had chimed in as well, on the city to acquire that land for, and to keep that as a natural habitat or even as a golf course, I think really is what it's being done. The chance of that happening probably is really something on given our finances at the city.
Right, that's a relatively large expenditure.
Exactly, yeah. and I, it's one of those things that we still have some long-term debt that's a higher priority in keeping the public safety and infrastructure investments where they need to be in the city. So that I can speak for the commission. I'll take a vote up here. It's probably, we won't do that, but it doesn't mean that we don't care about what's going to go in there, traffic impact, the neighborhood impact. There's a lot going on in that area right now, and there's been continued discussion about our property over to the west of Wilson or Lake Michigan Drive on the other side of Meyer, and that picking up steam as well. So traffic's going to continue to increase in that area over time. And
yeah, I stay away from Lake Michigan Drive as much as I can.
Yeah, exacerbates the issue there.
I mean, the shopping, that stuff is nice, but yeah, traffic is obviously becoming significantly more than what it used to be.
So, I don't know if Frank has anything to chime in, but one of the things from a social media perspective, social media is just wonderful too. It allows us kind of that instant, we can talk with one another without maybe having to pick up the phone at times. That might be convenient at that time, but it also has this ability to run rampant with speculation. And we've all felt it. Every single human being, I think, that uses it at some point says, oh my gosh, I just can't stand that platform, whatever it may be, not picking anybody in particular. So that being said, hopefully that clears up some of the air. Frank, I'll let you go, and then Mr. Van Doff, if there's any other questions you have for us, because I know we spoke just a little bit earlier today in dialogue from the neighborhood meeting. I had not talked with the managers yet since the meeting last week, and I wanted to have a live conversation of where are we at with this, and we do have the site plans in now. So, Frank, any other?
For full disclosure, the city's received an application to rezone there are two lots out there. One lot is about 100 acres, and that's the golf course. conference center or whatever it is.
Right, the structure on the site.
Structure
Yeah.
on the site.
Okay.
So years ago, that whole site was owned locally.
Mhm.
And then during the recession, somewhere around 2010, AMF came in and bought the whole site,
Mhm.
which we thought was interesting because AMF is a bowling company and why buy a golf course?
Mhm.
But then they split off the bowling alley from the golf course, but they retained ownership of both pieces of property. So you may have been around and heard what happened earlier this year with an application that wasn't complete.
Mhm.
And staff vetted that out and the project was withdrawn. But then the project later on was resubmitted. So city staff is obligated under due process to move those applications forward.
Okay, so was that the same developer? Okay, because the plan that was discussed the other night looked identical to what was published previously. Okay, so that explains why it was withdrawn in the spring and then is being resubmitted now.
It
Okay.
was withdrawn because the owner of the property wouldn't sign the application.
Okay.
And if you don't have the owner signing the application, it's like if you don't sign a contract, then the city doesn't consider it an active project. So they withdrew. And that, I'll be honest, that caused some concern from us. I have never, in over 20 years of planning practice, have never seen a property owner and developer not working together.
Mhm.
So that's part of the vetting process that we go through with any project that comes in the city, to see what's going on with the entities that are talking about it. But after that, prior to the whole COVID shutdown, we did receive another application from the same group of developers. AMF did sign it this time. I contacted AMF, it took me a while to find somebody, but they confirmed that they actually had signed the application. I'm sure that the real signature, signature rights on something like this. So then everything cooled off because of COVID. One of our requirements that we don't have in code, but we soon will, is that any major project needs to hold a public meeting prior to getting meetings. It tends to be a process where the community can get used to the application before it just lands here for public. So that's what we did last stage. It took them a while to pull that off. It certainly wasn't a perfect vehicle by any means, but we did have 70 logons, and from what I could tell on the screens, there was probably 2 people per logon, so it's 140 people, which is typically what we get in a room like this. So the response was good as far as people showing up to the meeting. So they cleared that hurdle, but just to let you know from full disclosure, Site Plan Review Committee, which is your staff, will review their latest plans, which is what you saw on the screen, on November 19th. And then after that, there will be a public hearing on December 16th at the Planning Commission level. So Steve's your contact person for Planning Commission, we also have the other third ward commissioners. And that will be an official public hearing. I don't know where we're going to hold that yet. We may do it at Fire Station 2 upstairs, just because we have more room there. And who knows what COVID's going to look like. We might not do it at all. If things are shut down, then we're not going to do it. But that will be for what we call a preliminary area site plan, which will be pretty much what you saw on the screen. And then also, most importantly, the request to rezone. Now, you'll hear more on that night about, what is a rezoning entail, and we have a checklist for things about, here's what the planning commission should consider when a rezoning application is received. Not every rezoning gets approved. But the planning commission, per the ordinance, and will be directed by staff to go through the ordinance, to make what's called findings of fact, one way or another on this. But as the mayor said, because it's a rezoning that they're requesting, the decision rests with the city commission. And I think that's important to understand. And so we will work with the city commission to get them the whole picture that comes through planning commission, and then also with any debate that goes on at the city commission level. I don't see this being a quick review process. I think most of these major projects take a long time to work themselves through the chain. And there's a reason for that. boundaries, you'll receive a card in the mail.
Okay.
If you do not live within 300 feet, please stay in touch with Walker social media and the Walker website. Everything is posted up there. And I have a feeling that you'll probably also hear before you heard that there's community groups out there. So once those notices start to go out, I'm sure you'll hear that way. But the last thing I'll say is there's two major things for this project. Number one is they have not provided a traffic study. And I think you heard that on Thursday night, which I found pretty interesting. I don't know what an internal traffic study is. But with every project that comes in as a major project, developers are required to submit a traffic study. And MDOT, in this case, is going to be a big part of that study, because MDOT owns those Michigan drives. And to give you an example, the Westtown Apartments and all the strip development that's going out there, including all they had to do a traffic analysis, we vetted that through, and the developer was responsible for $1 million in improvements to M11 and 45. Now, you may not see it when you go out there, but they made $1 million in improvements between signal and pavement. We're not even to step one. So MDOT has to be a part of that, and then big parts of the traffic study are trip generation, which is based on land use, trip direction, which is really based on land use, and the big thing here for, I think, the neighborhoods is street connectivity. Now, the street connectivity, the thing that I was watching that meeting Thursday night, and planners are trained to not just lock in on one concept. Just like most of you folks in your jobs too, don't go down that rabbit hole too quickly. Let's look at other options. So the planning commission say, or be encouraged by staff, and we're going to say this to the developer as well on the 19th here, you need to come up with some options here. This is a conceptual drawing. It's not etched in stone. So we're going to work in a iterative process to develop a plan. So I hope that helps you think that what landed on that screen is not the be-all and end-all. That there's a process of negotiation, there's a process of ordinance review, and I think your staff is going to do that.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, has there been any other developers interested or signified any interest in that property?
You know, that is one site that's really been an oddball. I'll give you an example from another golf course that is probably going to convert to Invocation. 4 mile.
Yep.
Similar situation, rural but right in the city. There have been multiple developers on that site. The Walkerview site where FedEx is now, multiple developers over the years. But this one, since A&F purchased it, I've been here since '04. This is the only one that's coming. So I don't know why that is, but regardless of how many people have come in the door, we have an application process and we're committed to what we just talked about, as far as not just rubber stamping and plan that comes in. It needs to be thoroughly vetted, and your elected officials have the final say on this one.
Thank you.
And I think, Mr. Van Dopp, if I could, for the neighborhoods back to the residents, as Frank had shared, it's been a bit choppy. I realize there's some impact of COVID in there for the developer. Then I think there's some self-inflicted choppiness from the developer. And my disappointment is extreme with what took place back in the spring. So it's the same developer. And with getting really, I think the uproar that it caused was so premature and so unnecessary. We've been very insistent on, you need to meet with residents, you need to hear what they have to say, and they did that somewhat the other night. I think the message is loud and clear right now where the neighborhood stands, and we appreciate very much the feedback and hope that we'd continue to do that, and feel free to reach out, whether it's not just the third wards, but to any one of us, letting us know, we do need to hear these things.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that rezoning request is probably going to come towards us. We are not going to rush into anything. That is, if I make no other commitment with this, whatever decision we make is going to be very deliberate, and it's going to be a fact-based decision. And so I think that's in the neighborhood's best interest, the residents' best interest, city's best interest, really.
Yeah.
I don't know, from your perspective, any other questions or comments from the others?
Well, I guess I just
No,
thought,
please go ahead.
thought of one. So just with AMF looking to sell off the property for development, has AMF made any comments or hinted towards simply closing the business and leaving the lot vacant and closed? I mean, are they looking to walk away from this, or, I mean, I certainly don't want the property just being abandoned either. We want to keep it nicely, so I'm
Yeah, and
just curious if they've had any input on that.
I don't know if Frank's heard anything. I would offer up, having golfed with my boys a few times last summer out on the course, not a lot of investment being made to the course and the amenities on the course, so I'm being kind there. Matter of fact, the day that COVID broke in the county, and we had a press conference on a Sunday afternoon, that we were called down, a few of the mayors were called down to the county, and I think Frank was with me. Darrell was out of town that day, and we had to go down there for that emergency press conference, and we were starting the early March restrictions on the restaurants and stuff. I was actually bowling at Lincoln at that point, and when I got the call from the county, so on a Sunday afternoon nonetheless. So, I believe the business, people are using the businesses, particularly the golf course right now. So there's some revenue stream coming in. So if this particular developer does not get this project off the ground, I don't see that golf course just sitting there, because you're silly not to, your expenses are there right now, but there's not as many expenses as there typically would be, because they are letting some things go there, just observation on things. So I can't see them doing it. Plus, I would offer up, we do have blight ordinances too within the city to not let things get out of control.
Right.
So just some thoughts there.
All right.
But any other questions from the commissioners for Mr. Van Dopp at all? Okay. Sarah, would you like to come up?
This is probably, but like the drainage and stuff, but if they do redevelop this, we are very wet. Like our whole area is very, very wet.
Sure.
And our pond, so we live on the water, and it gets so high sometimes, like our dock is covered, it's way up in our yard. And so I'd hate to think that there's gonna be more water coming down into our pond.
Sure.
Cause we live on the west side of Maple Row, and all the water from the east side of Maple Row drains into our pond. So like we're already getting a ton. Is there anything else?
Yeah, it would just be a matter of ensuring that any.
Yeah, we don't want any
in there needs to have
their own type of,
sufficient drainage capacity.
because it's very wet.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sure, you can see that on the north edge of the course. Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
want that coming in and flooding our basements.
Yeah, and that is always one of our top considerations when we're doing our planning commission reviews, that sites are water neutral to the other sites around them. So that's something we'll definitely have as a top priority in any review on this site, but certainly it'll be an important component of this as well.
Yeah. The sidewalks, they end at our house, so we have lots of little kids, even teenagers, up and down that road all the time. So without sidewalks, it's pretty dangerous, so.
Yeah, it's not bad now, but with increased traffic.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's close to the end of the road up by the Leonard side. There is a concern that there's something of a blind curve as you come into.
Oh, sure, it's that first curve coming in there.
And, my finger with a tape measure measuring the road, I believe the plan calls for the road to be at least 34 feet, so that there can be 7 foot for parking on either side and 2 10-foot driving lanes. It's not that wide. There are some houses towards the Leonard end of the street where, just from eyeballing it, I don't believe they'd be able to get that width, plus I think there's a 7-foot buffer, plus a 6-foot sidewalk that is called for in the plan. There's at least one house in particular, I think the sidewalk would be basically right in front of the garage, so I'm not sure there's enough room if they were to want to widen that out and put in the sidewalks that would be necessary to keep people safe, that there's enough room to do that all the way through. And I think the initial plan, if I remember right, from back in January, February, the major change that was a concern from that plan to this plan is that this plan called for Maple Road and Lincoln Lawns to be connected as a straight shot through. Now there is a traffic circle there, and here and in our previous phone calls and such. But I don't think realistically that straight shot is gonna stop too many people. You know, you're gonna get people coming up, and once they discover that that's there, you're gonna have a lot of crossover traffic, and the developer did mention, potentially, you know, talking to MDOT about putting a light there. I think that would probably make it worse, because as we were talking about, anytime there's a light, people that aren't familiar with the area will assume that it goes somewhere, and they will, you know, use that if there's an accident or whatever, and they want to change direction. But the initial plan called for both Customer and Maple Road to be connected to the single-family home development at the back. So there really wouldn't be a straight shot to get through. You could come in Lincoln Lawns, but you would really have to weave around the neighborhood to find out that it goes through to Leonard. So I mean, ideally we wouldn't want to connect it all the way through, but if we did, a more roundabout connection would be better, just to maintain, you know, we already have Walker PD out a couple of times a year because people are coming through our street fast anyway, over the speed limit, and, you know, I think that would only get worse if we had a good straight connection through to M45, so.
No, great insight, and we appreciate the time you've made coming tonight, sharing the details. Maybe an ask that we have of each of you, you know, good feedback for Commissioner Gilbert, particularly the Planning Commission, and then also for staff that they'll hear the comments and feedback from the neighbors. Maybe an ask for the three of you to take back, if you could. One, just letting the other neighbors know, whether Lincoln Lawns, Sunset Hill, I mean, and then the whole area back there, the voices are being heard. We are listening. And this is why we're having this dialogue now in an open setting, so that people know that the voices are being heard. And then the second is maybe helping explain what that process looks like. I know that's detailed on some of the neighborhood pages and otherwise that was shared, but that's good, because then the people understand what it is, and it's not a bum rush through for something. Our job as elected officials up here, the 7 of us, are to represent our residents, our constituents in the community. It's not to represent necessarily not a town developer. And I'll say necessarily because sometimes we are a pro-growth community, that we want the businesses, we want those houses being built. We have a shortage of housing, but it has to be the right type of housing too, in the right type of setup. And I think it's not just looking at the confines of that golf course. It's looking at it as a chessboard, because when you do things here, it's impacting things further up towards Leonard Street. It's impacting things further into some of those neighborhoods as additional connectivity is made. So we're well aware of it, keeping a very close eye on it at this point. But again, I do want to apologize, because the process has been less than ideal from my perspective. I won't speak for the others up here, but COVID has impacted some of their steps, but then some of it's been some missteps that hasn't been real clean. So maybe it's just the ask that we have of you, is letting people know voices are being heard, we're available to hear some more, and then also that the process is pretty clearly defined of what that looks like, and we want people involved with that piece. So,
Thank you.
Sound fair?
Thank you.
Super. Thank you for making the time tonight. Appreciate it, and we're available. So, good enough. Anything else? Officer Tappan, is anything on public comment you want to share? Nothing. All right. All right. We've covered Commissioner and City Manager comments. Anything else from the group? I'll go one last round here for our esteemed colleague. Nice little write-up today in the newsletter. I'm not sure if you read it yet.
Thank you.
That's what happens when you don't get to see it first. So, all right. Otherwise, that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Commissioner
support.
Kent, that would be fantastic.